Good afternoon. This is Dan Abella from the Philip K. Dick Talks and the Psychedelic Film and Music Festival. As you all know, we're having a very special event this coming weekend to help our boys, our vets who are suffering from PTSD. Now, currently, there's still a lot of misconception of what PTSD is and what it means. So to clarify this, I brought in a very special guest who was actually on the show before, Dr. Diane Henacy Powell. For those who are not familiar where to go, we will have a short break after the program, and we'll go into the specifics of where to go to regarding tickets as well as donations. But let me start off by introducing Dr. Powell. Dr. Powell, how are you? Thank you again for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
Great. For those who are not familiar with Dr. Powell, let me share some of her very rich and interesting background. She's Dr. Diane Henacy Powell is a MD, is an author, public speaker, researcher, and practicing psychiatrist. She's an award-winning clinician and internationally recognized expert on autism and savant syndrome. She is also a graduate of the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine and taught neuropsychiatry at Harvard Medical School. Her research interests include the neuroscience of extraordinary states of human consciousness and anomalous experiences. In her book, the ESP Enigma received an award from the LA Film Festival of Books and has been translated in multiple languages. Dr. Powell has an interest in a variety of subjects, all related to different states of consciousness, as well as the importance of integrating human awareness into various fields of endeavor. This includes, of course, the ESP project, but more important right now, what she has is the PTSD project. So with that, given that we're doing a small, very modest festival this weekend, I wanted to thanks Dr. Powell for coming in and clarify some of the misconceptions about PTSD, because the word has been floating around for some time, and I have a feeling that a lot of people still not really familiar what that word means and how to know whether somebody or not has PTSD. So if you want to just start off with giving us a very general definition of what PTSD is, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, but first of all, I just want to start by thanking our veterans, because, and all of our frontline workers, really. I mean, I really appreciate what they have put themselves through to really try to, preserve, everything that America stands for. And I have actually worked as a consultant with veterans because I am an expert on PTSD. And when I was in San Diego, I gave a lecture on PTSD at Balboa Hospital, which is the naval hospital there. And it was actually filmed and used to train people who were in the military working with veterans. And so I not only am an expert on PTSD, but I'm also very aware of the specific kinds of issues that veterans have. And one of the common things that I've found when I've evaluated veterans is that they could have in their chart have the diagnosis of PTSD and actually be undergoing treatment for PTSD and not even be aware that they've been diagnosed with PTSD, and they've never had anyone explain to them what PTSD is, and that really surprised me. And I think that the term took on this kind of stigma where a lot of people thought, oh, well, PTSD, it sounds like, some kind of mental illness. It sounds like some kind of weakness, but it is far from that. It really is, to put it simply, it's that somebody has been through an experience that is highly traumatic. So it can be a single experience, such as seeing one of your buddies get killed in front of you, or yourself being in a situation where you have to engage in combat, and there are civilian casualties. And so these kinds of experiences where we just have a shock value to it are common precipitants of PTSD. But you can also have PTSD from having several experiences chronically over a period of time that all add up to a really significant trauma. And additionally, you can have something like one of these intermittent explosive devices go off within a certain radius of you. And because of the impact that that has on the brain, it not only creates a traumatic brain injury, but it also can shear some of the axons and create all of the symptoms of PTSD. And so in the way that the clinical definition of PTSD, though, is that you have to have experienced some kind of extraordinarily traumatic event or events that cumulatively were very shocking. And basically, your nervous system has never gone back to its baseline state, that you find that you get triggered into either states of, it can be either anxiety or it can actually be rage, because anxiety and rage are both high adrenaline states, and you can get triggered into these states by anything that is reminiscent of the trauma that you experience. So it could, for a veteran, it could be something as simple as, for some of the people that I worked with were affected by these explosive devices that were actually hidden under, say, an everyday object, like, for example, a trash can that's in the street. And so driving down a street that has a trash can on the side of the street can be something that triggers it. And when the person gets triggered, they feel all of the anxiety that they experienced at the time that they were originally traumatized. It's as though they're reliving that experience. And some people have flashbacks in which they actually get disoriented and actually think that they are reliving that experience. It's as though they time travel back to the trauma itself. Then there are other people that happens in their dreams, and they'll have recurrent nightmares of the trauma. So those are really, I think, some of the just basic points that are the common denominators. But there are all of these other things that can come along with PTSD that are part of the syndrome that people may not associate with the PTSD. Things like just being more socially withdrawn, just not being as interested in things that used to be interested in, finding that you're just more irritable, and even with people that you really love, finding that you can't concentrate very well, and commonly these symptoms get treated with, people go and get self-medicate themselves. So they go and they get alcohol and they find that they feel better. But then unfortunately, then they start developing a problem with alcohol. And so you can have these huge mood swings. You can have just all of these unstable issues where you're really finding that your world is just kind of closing in on you because you've had so much trauma that you really feel disconnected from, and things can even take on kind of an unreal sort of a feel to them. You can get paranoid, you can disassociate, which means you can be leaving your body, temporarily. Just a whole host of things that I've seen as sequelae of this. But the underlying things is this history of trauma, and then you're reliving it.
This has been a really difficult year, obviously, during the pandemic, and a lot of the symptoms you just reported, PTSD, such as irritability, withdrawn, outbursts of anger or anxiety are all symptoms that a lot of people have been reporting as a result of the lockdown. So for those who are there, vets and civilians alike, who might be listening, what could be certain things that will set the difference between just being a temporary stress syndrome created by the pandemic versus a more about a long-term PTSD? Is there any indicators one should just look out for that kind of are red flags and say, hey, perhaps I should look for some real treatment? Because I suspect the drinking, the irritability, that's all being reported in the New York Times and other publications as being part of the lockdown and the fear of catching the virus or what more. So I'm wondering, in your opinion, what markers would you say are good indications that someone should just not ignore it? Oh, let me just drink, grab another glass of bourbon. So what are markers, something that we should look for, if any, that so we can kind of intercept the development of this condition?
Well, what I would say is that, unfortunately, I would say that a lot of people now probably have PTSD because this past year has been so hard on them. It's been so disruptive for people to lose family members, to lose their way of life. A lot of people have lost their jobs. The stress that people have been under is enormous. And so I think that actually what I would say is, if you have a lot of the symptoms that I just described, you probably should try to get some help, because just because you have a lot of company in this doesn't mean that it's something that you should just say, well, it's normal, because it's become the new normal for a lot of people. And what I would say is that there's a difference between acute PTSD and chronic PTSD.
Okay.
So one of the things that we look at is, have these symptoms that I've described gone on for more than 6 months? If things have started to normalize and you see that you're still reacting this way after 6 months, then that's definitely an indicator that you should seek help.
So 6 months or thereabouts might be a good, at least time variable to look at. Now, because, what I find a little unsettling is that the New York Times recently reported that, about 1/3 of the people who might have PTSD, it just goes away on its own. So it's like an untreated problem that maybe festers and gets worse. So you say about 6 months, if these symptoms persist after about this time, then it's perhaps a good time to seek treatment.
I would say any time is a good time to seek treatment, right? Because what we actually, one of the things that we know is that people, if you've just had an acute trauma, okay, it's actually better to treat the person before they go into the chronic state. And so I don't want people to think, oh, okay, well, it's only been 4 months, so not 6 months, so don't worry about it. In fact, one of the things that happens is that the body, when you are traumatized, that the adrenal glands secrete both adrenaline and cortisol. And if somebody who's been chronically traumatized, or had a lot of trauma in your childhood before going overseas in service, then you may have an even more exaggerated adrenaline response. But the problem is that you also have a reduced cortisol response. And the cortisol is actually helpful as a protectant. And it's actually the cortisol that's one of the reasons why some people don't have much memory of what happened. And the adrenaline tends to make it like just emblazoned in your memory. Some people say, I experienced something that was just so dramatic. How can you possibly forget? But the difference between some people who forget and some people who can't forget it has to do with this cortisol issue. And so one of the things that was found is that if somebody's just had a horrible experience, let's say like 9/11 type thing, then if you give them a shot of cortisol shortly after, that you can actually prevent PTSD.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware. Yeah. Wow. Cortisol. So cortisol, because I've read that people with high anxiety level that are chronically anxious tend to have higher their normal cortisol levels. But this is an interesting. Now, in terms of veterans, what has been your experience? I mean, this prior to the pandemic, it was widely reported that the number of self-inflicted wounds and deaths by fire was on the increase. In fact, there was a report that said approximately 22 or 21 or 22 veterans kill themselves every day from what has been your during the last year? Have you been in touch with veterans, or have you known of cases where the situation is getting worse, or is pretty much the same? How has the pandemic impacted their condition?
Well, the pandemic has been problematic because people have been locked up, so they haven't had their usual sources of stress reduction, whether it's going to the gym or getting together with your buddies or watching sports. I mean, a lot of sports got just totally tabled. And so there's a lot of things that people did that were healthy kinds of ways of letting off stress that they weren't able to do. And then here they are locked up and they're more irritable. We know that alcohol use has gone up. And then now they're fighting with their family members because they're all locked up together. So we know that domestic violence has gone up. And one of the problems is that so often in the person who has this kind of difficulty, they know they're messed up, and they don't get the kind of response at the VA that gives them hope that they can get better, and so then they get into this mindset of the world's better off without me. And so it's not always that some of it is that they're suffering so much that they just can't take it anymore, but they also can become convinced that people would be better off without them because they feel that they're so miserable. And one of the messages that I think it's important for them to understand is that it is traumatic for those of us who love them to have them. It's traumatic just to even know that they think that way sometimes, because really, and then if they take their own life, I mean, it's such then that creates another generation of layer of trauma, for anyone who's been connected with that person. And so what we need to do is we need to stop this sort of domino effect of trauma. And one of the reasons why a lot of veterans have felt kind of hopeless is because when they go to the VA, one of the things that the VAs have done is they've done what's called exposure therapy. And that's probably one of the worst things that you could do. And what I mean by exposure therapy is that they will show you movies that are going to trigger your PTSD because you are living with a movie the traumatic experience. And their idea is, well, if I just keep flooding you with it over and over and over again, then eventually you're going to stop responding to it. The problem is that is very misguided. And that kind of exposure therapy only works if you have an irrational fear of something. So if I somehow had, severe anxiety paired with a bunny rabbit, then having me spend all this time with bunny rabbits will help me get over that fear. But if what you're talking about is watching violence is what's traumatized me, then watching more violence is not going to undo it. Another thing is that the VAs have been very they've been very heavy in their usage of various pharmaceuticals, and a lot of veterans really don't like the idea of taking psychiatric drugs, and I think that that's very, very understandable. I've had really good success with people that I've treated with medication, but the thing is that that's not the medication alone is usually not enough. People really need to have therapy, and the kind of therapy they need is a therapy in which they learn how to quiet their nervous system, and they learn how to be able to slowly revisit some of these events that happened, but be able to first have a very calm sort of a calm state of mind, and then deal with just tiny little bits of it. So and really what you need to do is you need to help them to reset their nervous system, and resetting the nervous system is something that can be done with neurofeedback. And I can get into that if you want me to now.
Sure. Definitely. We'll definitely want to go into that area in a few minutes. On dovetailing with what you mentioned regarding VA, and not all VA hospitals treat their vets the same. I have a few friends who served in Afghanistan, and one of them told me a story about a friend of his who wanted to set up an appointment, and the VA said, "Well, you got to wait about 2 months." And the guy decided that that was too long, and unfortunately, he took his life. So there seems to be also a lack of a centralized effort. Seems like everybody's got these different units doing their own little thing. Some of them are doing exposure. Others, I even hear they're doing VR, virtual reality therapy, and others are even working with MDMA, which we talk about millions of people. I can't imagine that even if we can scale up MDMA therapy to that level, that we're going to have millions of veterans willingly going into the VA hospitals. Okay, give me a shot. It just doesn't seem, it seems like something else is needed here. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel that that we're trying to deal with an issue which is much bigger than a few thousand people. And yet the solutions that I see emerging, reported regularly from the newspaper that might work for a few hundred, maybe even a few thousand. So that's really the goal, is to provide some sort of answer to the large scale issue that's obviously we're working with. So please, comment on that. I'm very interested in seeing what's out there. I mean, just a few days ago, the New York Times talked about VR therapy, and they said, well, even though it's controversial, some people swear by it. And I said, what are you doing here? And the day before, they were talking about MDMA. So almost every day they pick up something different. So what's the consensus amongst professionals like yourself as to how to go about it, and what's moving forward in dealing with this condition?
Well, and let me say, I agree with you that you can't lump all of the VAs together and say that they're all doing exactly the same thing, because some of them are doing innovative therapies, but
Right.
then there are others that are not. And one of the things that it's important for veterans to know is that if there was a law that was passed such that if they're not getting evaluated or getting treatment within a timely fashion at their VA, then they can go outside of the system and see a private psychiatrist such as myself.
Okay.
Which is one of the reasons why I've seen so many vets. It's because, I mean, some of these people were waiting to be evaluated for 2 years.
Wow. Yeah. So, well, that brings us to the treatment, the PTSD project, which you promoting. That there's a specific treatment associated with that. Please, can you share with us?
Okay. So one of the things that we know about the brain is that it is an electromagnetic organ. Okay, and so when you get an EEG, you're actually measuring the electromagnetic waves at the level of the scalp. And with sophisticated computer technology, we can actually map out your brain and see which areas of your brain are running too fast, which part of your brain is running too slow. And we know what normative data is, and we know what all the data is for various conditions. So if you have somebody who has a combination of, let's say, PTSD and depression and alcoholism, they're going to have alterations in their brainwave activity from all of those different conditions just muddied together. But what's beautiful about this brain mapping technology called QEEG is that it can analyze your brain waves and figure out, not only diagnostically what's going on with you, but it also then can guide someone who knows how to do neurofeedback with the treatment plan. And so what neurofeedback does is it measures your brainwave activity and then has you Bluetooth connected to a computer screen, and let's say you're watching you're playing a video game or you're watching a movie. What it does is it gives you that movie or that video game as a measuring stick for how your brain wave activity is going. And so the person who sets it up knows, let's say, I'm just going to make up something. They know that you have too much activity in area A and you have too much activity in area B, but too little activity in area C, okay, given the normative data for what would be somebody who's not traumatized. Then what they do is they set up the video game such that, whatever it is you want to be doing, let's say you want to be, racing cars in your video game, or, shooting, arrows at a target or whatever. The closer your brain activity gets to what they want the target to be, the better the video game goes. And so and there's drift that occurs in brainwave activity. So it's sort of like it drifts a little bit towards what's normal. That gets rewarded by the video game working more easily. You make the shot of the basket, that you're doing with your avatar on the video game. And so then you don't even have to know what it was you did. This is the beauty of biofeedback. You don't have to know what it was that you did that caused that. You just want more of it. And so then just that desire for more of that, the brain will on its own start to create a little bit more of that. And it's self-reinforcing. And when you're shifting that brainwave activity, you're also driving the activity to the regions of the brain that you want the activity in that are underperforming, and you're reducing the activity in the areas of the brain that are overperforming. And over time, doing sessions after sessions after sessions with this biofeedback, you then rewire your brain so that you don't need to be doing the neurofeedback anymore. So it's a way of in a non-invasive way. It's a way of rewiring your brain back to normal, and it's something that's already being used by the NFL for concussions, for example. And so it has particular utility in people that have a combination of traumatic brain injury and PTSD, but it can be used just for PTSD. And so one of the ideas that I had, and then I found out that there was somebody actually working on this, and I was delighted about that and wanted to help promote that, was the idea of taking this neurofeedback, which we know works, and making an app and making it so the vet doesn't have to be going into the clinic. And because people have PTSD, especially if, they're out in remote areas. I mean, they don't want to be driving into a clinic to be sitting in front of somebody's computer screen for, an hour every other day for, a year or two. That's a lot of, that's asking a lot of them for them to, get there and to do that. But if you provided it as, here's your app, and have at it. Here's your little, because you don't need the full diagnostic EEG cap that's used for the diagnosis. You just need to have the areas of the brain monitored that for the feedback loops that you're interested in. And so and then every 3 months or so, you go in and you get another complete brain map, and then they upgrade your app so that it's taking you to the next level. And to me, when I found out that with today's technology and whatnot, that they could do something like that would only cost literally $2,000-$3,000 per vet. I mean, to me, it was a no-brainer. They spend more than that amount of money on medications.
Well, absolutely. So in principle, after once the mapping of the brain has been made, the client could use it outside the office by placing some sort of net over his head and then connecting it through the app, and I guess he would have a computer where he would interact and play with the game.
Right. I mean, all the person needs really is that's right. They just need a computer. I mean, ideally, most people want to play video games on a computer rather than on a phone.
Right.
But yeah, all they would need is they could do it at home, and the cap, is just a simple. I mean, anybody who's had any kind of like an EKG recently or anything like that, you realize that these electrodes. I mean, they've made things so much easier for them to just stick them on and take them off, and so it really. To me, there's no downside to it, and that's one of the things that I see with some of these other treatments is that they're asking too much of the veteran, and a lot of them they don't want to be putting drugs in their body.
So where is the current? In what stage is this new program, or has it been developed into an app, or where has it gone from here?
Well. There are people that I know who are who really want to see that happen, but unfortunately, it's I'm not. This isn't my company. It's
right.
not. And so I've gone and I've testified in front of my state Congress. On behalf of veterans, advocating for this, and I've done different things to try to make people aware that this exists out there.
Right.
But right now, I think it was just kind of put on hold.
Huh.
And yeah, I know it's such a great idea, and I really I was very disappointed to hear that there was that the company, the parent company of this technology, decided that they wanted to put their emphasis more on like Alzheimer's disease and making money off of diagnosis and this and that. And I was just like, no, this project still needs to happen, and particularly with all of the people that are suffering. So I think what needs to happen is that as more veterans become aware of this, they can make their local VAs aware of it. They can lobby for it, and I think that if you have a grassroots movement of people saying, I heard about this technology, and can we look into that and whatnot, that it will happen. It will happen because it's, as I said, there's no downside to it, and it's very cost efficient.
Especially when you consider that in terms of time, money, and resources, billions of dollars are basically used on the treatment of and often unsuccessfully. It's costing the economy. Because often, unfortunately, for a lot of these companies, it comes to dollars and cents. Well, where do we have the profit, or where we have the contract? Some of the research I've seen is that I think it's like $50 billion costs the U.S. alone, more than $50 billion a year in treatment. It could be off, but it's a substantial amount of money. So it's not just, more importantly, we're helping people, but also that it's more efficient for the economic system to move forward. And you're right. I mean, I think it has to do with, it's kind of in a very, this is like a very sophisticated technology, but it's, I think, a much more simpler version of those who cannot even follow. Might be those who, you see a lot of the young people and some older people who are almost entranced by the whole chat, Snapchat or Facebook, and they talk about the quote unquote dopamine hits. Not sure about the science behind that, but it seems that we're doing something really important. This company, in a way, it's like re-entraining the nervous system to at a lower baseline that would be more compatible with normal reactions to events. So, well, and the name of is this one company, or it's called Neurofeedback?
No. Well, the company that I was working with, working with in the sense that I was out there advocating for them and their technology was, their name was Evoke.
But in case someone wanted to learn more about it, a veteran who's currently watching, or a friend of a veteran, what is the generic term? Is that neurofeedback? What would be?
Yes, neurofeedback. Yes.
A lot of people out there are familiar with biofeedback, which was more of a 70s, early 80s term. And I believe there's certain companies right now that claim that through these special kinds of headsets that people wear, they can improve their memory and so on. So the paradigm is there. It's all about awareness and focusing the attention on that issue. For those who are unfortunately seeking or looking for something much more immediate, so what are the alternatives that you think, in your opinion, have shown to be effective in the treatment of PTSD?
One of them is EMDR. I mean, EMDR, eye movement desensitization. And that is a technique in which a therapist works with you, and it gets its name from the fact that if you have something that is like a stimulus, that's moving back and forth like this, and you have somebody's eyes follow it, which is, classic sort of way of hypnotizing somebody, in the movies, watch this pendulum swing back and forth, right, kind of thing. Well, what happens when you're getting the eyes to move back and forth like that is that the eyes actually play a role in controlling what part of your brain you're using. And this is where neuro-linguistic programming comes from, that your eyes will look in different directions, and then, up, down, or directly across, depending upon whether you are remembering something or imagining something, and whether or not it's a visual thing or an auditory thing or a sensation. You actually can watch somebody's eyes move, and they will they'll look differently depending upon what part of their body or their mind they're accessing. And so what this technology does is it's having it's directing your eye movements to activate both hemispheres in your brain, to get them to coordinate together. So think of, just simplistically, think of the right hemisphere as your emotional side, and the left hemisphere is your logical side. And so you're trying to get the logical and the emotional to work together. And with a lot of people with PTSD, they would say that, it feels so illogical to them. And right. So working with them to get them so that they can actually think about something that's emotional, and not have those emotions come up, And so you create as a therapist, you create a hierarchy, starting with something that, remember, whatever, some trauma you had that's relatively minor, in comparison, remember when your dad spanked you when you were 5 years old because you put shoe polish on his, whatever. And then, but you think back to that, and then you have just maybe a little anxiety, and then you through this technique, you learn to relax and to be able to think about that and not have it phase you at all. then you move on to the next thing, because that's what you want. You want somebody to have a little bit of, just a little bit of feeling that they can manage, but not so much that they just, they can't manage it.
There was a doctor in, I think, the early 90s. He came up with, it was a kind of an adaptation of a neuro-linguistic technique as well, called the rewind therapy, where the patient gets to take an event, and it's a kind of a dissociation technique where they see the event cast on a white canvas, and they rewind it very fast, and it's a double dissociation technique, and at least from the very few clinical studies that I read, it showed promise. But unfortunately, that's another thing that I wanted to ask you regarding clinical trials and studies. It seems like there never seems to be enough of any one technique. Like you hear about VR and so on, but which is the one that seems to be a kind of a standard? Besides, they're like exposure therapy. I don't know why, but besides exposure or CBT, which would you say is one that has been shown through clinical trials, I guess, to be effective? Is there any one that you can?
That the EMDR that I mentioned, that actually has been around for, probably 25 years or more. I have used it extensively with people who have really the worst PTSD on the planet. So one of the things that when I was in San Diego, I helped create the psychiatric program for survivors of torture. And I worked with people who had been tortured or who had been in countries like Rwanda that had genocide, massive genocide of the people, and the Lost Boys of Sudan. Anyway, people who had just seen total horror and devastation, who looked like the Walking Dead when I met them. And I saw them develop the light back in their eyes and really overcome things that people didn't think could be done. And it was really a combination of, I used, low levels of the SSRIs. Some of them are better for treating PTSD than others, and the EMDR.
So it was a combination of that. Oh, that's great. That's, at least it's encouraging to show there are certain, while we hopefully will develop some kind of a program and app that can be maybe neurofeedback and be integrated with our own nervous system, that there are some modalities out there that we can that can be used, because I do think this is a real issue, and I'm afraid, just unfortunately, because of the pandemic, it's only gotten worse, and they're just starting to talk about it a little bit now that the actual pandemic itself is unfortunately is declining. Now I think the mental issues will start coming up. But well, that's fantastic. That's and in case is there any contact information in case there's some veterans who are watching? Is there a number or a contact or a website that you can refer them to, including your own practice?
Well, they can come to my website, which is drdianehenacy.com. And that's spelled DRDIANEHENNACY.com.
Great. I think that's the one we had from the last time. We'll definitely include that in the links. And well, thank you, Doctor. I think that you've hopefully clarified some of these issues regarding this condition. And as I said, my heart goes out to the vets who are really who fought our wars. We may not agree politically, some of us, but nevertheless, we still support them because they're there for us. They're there for us, and we should be there for them now that they need us. So, at least on my end, this is why we're doing the Rock Against PTSD. Hopefully, this will turn into something a little bit bigger next year. Like anything else, it just takes time. But keeping my fingers crossed. And again, thank you again for your time and helping your clarification. And we'll definitely looking forward to your book, which you're mentioned earlier. For those who are not familiar, we talked about her research, which is absolutely fascinating. And I will definitely make set up a link for the other polymath pretty much various projects are the same. Very interesting. Right
Yep.
brain, left brain. The work is definitely converging. I see the work of Ian Gilchrist, the British psychiatrist. His name is Ian, the Master and his Emissary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it kind of, it seems like there's something, a movement here to understand. Hopefully we'll be able to really create apps for veterans so we can they can live a better life.
I think that I'm actually optimistic because of the fact that we have so much PTSD now. I mean, there are just so many people who've been traumatized that I think that they're going to that some of these technologies are going to become much more widespread and get developed fast tracked, because I mean, there's just so many people that need them now. They've got tremendous need.
There's a lot of demand for some solution. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And then the other thing I was going to say is that one of the things that I learned from doing so much trauma work is that, I mean, a lot of these people have had near-death experiences, and as a result of that, they really have a strong spirituality that can come out of it. And I think that we could be at a time where, you know, where all of this PTSD, it could play a role in terms of our transformation and really getting people to really start to pay attention to what's really important.
Yeah, I think the signs are there. I think there are signs from, it's almost like a new paradigm is needed, or to incorporate all these different experiences people are having, and to really put it one, you know, expand the paradigm, maybe change it. Because I do think you're right. I think there's a lot of and there's definitely interaction between what's happening and the various states of consciousness. So we'll hopefully be able to turn to you when for more clarification as we get further into this. And again, thank you for everything. We'll set up the links below, and you have a great day. Enjoy it.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Okay, folks, so hopefully you guys, there's been a little clarification. Again, I want to thank Dr. Diane Henacy Powell for her very clear elucidation of the issue that faces us. So even though our psychedelic film festival and Philip K. Dick, we talk about different things from sci-fi to psychedelics, at the bottom of the line, at the bottom is our humanity that needs to be preserved and kept. So instead of connecting us to machines or merging with the AI, there are technologies out there that we need to avail or help others avail, so that we remain humans and with the dignity that is our birthright. So let's look beyond science fiction, and let's look beyond psychedelics as a road to expanding what it means to be human. And as humans, we suffer, and it is the goal of our goal is to ease that suffering. So as we move forward ahead, we can all share a better, a more wonderful world. So I hope to see some of you on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Again, it's a $10. If you want to watch the program, the whole festival is only $10. It's a music festival. Many bands, including the Asset Mothers Temple, and joined us. But if you also want to make a direct donation to the Wounded Warrior Project, and that's goes directly to them. They're asking for a $20 donation. Send me the link or send me the email, and I'll send you a free pass for you and others who might be interested. So either way, let's keep the march going, and I hope to see some of you on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. Enjoy the day. God bless, and on we go. Bye-bye.